Yes, definitely.
Why?
Because it will protect you. Because artists are great at knowing about art and not about anything else. And if you get into the world of entrepreneurship and you start like managing how you create around the whole sector, it will protect you like for more than anything else, more than just, you know, being able to know what somebody's talking about or being informed. It will protect you from being ripped to shreds, because genuinely you can't operate on everybody's good graces. You can't operate on, yeah, he'll pay me. Like, you can't operate on wishful thinking. It just doesn't work. You get screwed over. So being it like understanding entrepreneurship as a concept will help protect you.
That's why I say mainly like illustrator and visual artist, because for me, illustrator is doing commercial art, like answering to a brief. And within illustration, you have already so many categories, I guess. You have commercial illustration, which would be, let's say, to work with a brand on a campaign. So you might have some billboards, you might have an Instagram campaign, you might have packaging. I mean, I'm not saying your main only aim as an illustrator is to do commercial work, but that's where, if you want to make a decent enough living, you want to get these nice partnerships with obviously brands that align with your values and ethics and things you want to do and your aesthetic, where you won't compromise your art. And so I have agents as well that deal with that side of my business, which so if someone comes in with a query and they want some logo or packaging, or it's like usually agencies, like bigger marketing agencies that work on behalf of this or this brand, and that's really answering to a brief. You have some how do I say that? Like, you have some things to tick. I mean, you have to apply their color palette or some boxes to tick. So that's more like the illustration and answering the brief kind of aspect. Within that, you also have editorial illustration, which would be more like magazines, children's books, etc. So within the field of illustration, you can already have all of that. And then you can sell, let's say, just your prints or your paintings or whatever, and that maybe is the more artistic side of illustration, but you can apply it to so many things. And then for me, like the more visual art and artist side is more like self-initiated, so you won't necessarily answer to a brief, you won't necessarily have a client that will come and find you, but maybe you will be able to sell your ideas and paintings for what they are, so not necessarily taking on a commission. Obviously there is a bit of both in both worlds, but that's kind of where I kind of draw the line. And I can see a lot of my friends consider themselves visual artists and wouldn't want to answer a creative brief, wouldn't want to compromise their creativity in against a brief. So that's down as well to personal choice. For me, like, I find a balance by having the two. Like, I really like answering, like, I come from a more graphic design background, so I do like the buzz of working with brands, working with creative agencies, having an online presence. And also I do enjoy self-initiated projects that require maybe more of an opinion, or that could be like within projects, let's say like in Dublin, the grey area project with Subset, or things like that, that are not at all for money, not at all answering to a brief, but more self-expression kind of initiated projects. So that's kind of where I draw the line. And like, I could be quite, I think that vision varies from person to another, but that's kind of where I stand on that one.
It's been massively useful for us, you know. It's been a kind of defining feature, I would say, of the organization, whether you know, we're explicit about it or not, because I would define entrepreneurship as seeing opportunities and making connections, and they can be creative connections and they can be money making connections, you know, and you know, we're kind of interested in both. And then the other side of entrepreneurship is actually people wanting to be associated with whatever you're doing. So it's not just kind of coming from you, seeing the opportunities. There also has to be some kind of magnetism about what you're doing. And Feli and I have been just lucky enough to generate that, and for it to, you know, we never had a strategy. We just followed the rabbit hole of things that we thought were important to us, things that we thought were missing, and things that were fun. And in following that rabbit hole, the This Is Pop Baby family, the This Is Pop Baby machine, the idea of This Is Pop Baby just gathered more and more power, really. And so now we're in this like really amazing position where people will follow us anywhere. Like if we put a show on sale, people will buy tickets, you know, and it doesn't really matter where the show is or what the show's called. It's going to have a great image because we work with Noel Sweeney. But, you know, people will buy tickets, and that's very, very satisfying.
It's really hard to become to become like a professional artist, and I think it might actually be more difficult to become a professional artist in somewhere, you know, in a small country like Ireland, because I mean, you know, you could be lucky and you could get pieces accepted into like summer shows like the RHA and stuff, and you could be really lucky and somebody could buy them, and you know, or you can go to like the RDS's arts fair and sell small pieces, you know, and you can kind of, you know, you can build up a career on small things like that. But I think in order to become like a fully established professional artist, you need to gain recognition outside of Ireland. Like you need to get it from the UK, the US, somewhere like that, where they have this a more established art market, and they have more I mean, because here in Ireland we have the Arts Council, which is great, but I mean, it's such a small country, and the Arts Council is so limited, and there is so many people trying to make it as an artist and as a creative here in this country, that it's really difficult to get a foot in somewhere like that, because you're approaching them with a project, but they're also being approached by somebody who's really established and who's been around for 20 years. So they're going to go with them probably, you know? So you need to, so it's kind of, it's really difficult to, there is a certain aspect of luck needed in order to get it. But also you just need to kind of keep pushing and to keep, you know, to be bullheaded and to just say, you know, I don't care what I don't care what my parents say. I'm going to make it as an artist one day.
I think it does. I think it's about opportunities. I think it's about being able to, you know, that one of those there in the list was this idea about seeing opportunities, and they're not necessarily always, you know, I think there's a difference between, I could suggest that there is financial entrepreneurship, but there's also other types of entrepreneurship that could exist within, you know, the cultural sector, which are I suppose, let's say artistic entrepreneurship, or, you know, that they're not necessarily about money. You might need resources to achieve what the opportunity is, but that, you know, being able to really being able to kind of take advantage of opportunities that might arise or appear, you know, because somebody has this great idea, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're, you know, in the middle of making some really exciting art project or community project, or, you know, you're touring something to Macedonia, who knows. But like, I think there's a lightness of foot or touch or something that's needed in the arts to be able to respond to opportunities as they arise. That you can plan for things, and you can be, you know, you can make big projects happen, but also I think that that idea of being able to respond to things quickly, I think is the real sign of entrepreneurship in the arts. Being able to hear ideas, recognize good ideas, and then have the wherewithal to not let them slip through your fingers.
I think it has a very firm place. I think sometimes people think they're quite separate, but I think it's actually all of the kind of, I suppose, the kind of key structures of entrepreneurship lend themselves to, you know, really important art making in lots of ways. And I think, you know, going back, I think artists are, and the sector, let's just say, is like deeply collaborative, visionary, risk-taking. There's a lot of investment made in people's ideas and commitment to ideas over long terms. There's a great ability for people to self-manage, to bring other people on board, to invent things that were just not there in terms of like space, events, gigs, nights, support mechanisms, communities, building communities around ideas and around, I suppose, social and cultural and political agendas or needs. So I think there's a huge entrepreneurial energy within the arts in Ireland, and I think we're often conditioned to think of them quite separately, but actually I think intuitively they're very connected. And you know, there's no better person who, you know, who matches a small business that can basically, someone who can manage a small production budget and make something extraordinary happen, to someone who the following week is like putting in a bid for, like, you know, a massive large scale project as well. So I think the kind of dexterity that's required in the cultural sector lends to a synergy actually between our entrepreneurial community and the arts, and I actually think they merge and flow in a way that's much less visible than we probably initially imagine.
thing that came to my mind there, Dev, when you said entrepreneur and arts, entrepreneurship and arts, was I'm not too sure if people in the arts really like that word entrepreneurship, first of all. And I think that could be a stumbling block to why there's not more entrepreneurship in arts, because I think when people think entrepreneurship, they just think of Richard Branson and commercialism, you know, like something like that. So I looked at the website and I was thinking the exact same thing. It's like, this is exactly maybe why not that things don't work, or there's not as much entrepreneurship, but it's, you're back to that kind of art and commerce thing. If it was framed in a different way, like, you don't, it seems as if, and I'm just talking about Ireland, that it's either one or the other. You're either going to be this artist who wants to be a pure artist, or you want to be this entrepreneur that sold out. It's hard to see it in the middle sometimes, but I think it's possible. I think it doesn't have to be either or. Like,
I think it would depend on what you were producing. Like, I'm producing paintings and drawings, which do have a wide, not, I won't say remit, but they do go quite far afield out of this country as well. But to consider myself as an entrepreneur, I wouldn't I don't think I would do that, because it would put something in my mind that would turn me into more of a producer rather than an artist. Now that's not to say if I think more about this in the future, I might think about it differently. But from this moment in time, I think if you see yourself as an entrepreneur, then you probably see yourself as more of a machine that's maybe more into quicker, faster, producing more, and making a lot of money. So that's in a way how I would see it, where from my point of view, I'm working because I love doing what I'm doing. And obviously I need money to survive, but money isn't my driver. You know, if I was a fully fledged entrepreneur, I think money might be my driver, you know?
Yeah, there are some brilliant examples of artists who are doing absolutely amazing work. I may even mention some, you know, the work of Sarah Brown is absolutely phenomenal. The work of Dominic Thorpe, Seamus Nolan, just to mention a few, you know, and I'm not really sure, really, I mean, you know, I think we just have to move on from the concept of, let's say as a painter of the landscapes. Okay, so if a painter wants to paint a landscape, okay, that's fine. Okay, that's totally fine. That can be very healing. Okay, but I would really like to know, what does that work communicate with the audience? I think art, in my view, has to be political. Okay, art is political. It has to be political. It has to outline extremely difficult, terrible, devastating conditions for many, many people in this country. And before, I struggled a lot, because the Asylum Archive is more or less complete. It will never be completed. I will work on it for the rest of my life, but it is there, really. They didn't open more direct provision centers, didn't open more emergency accommodation centers, so it's all there. So that thing, when I went to Greece, and I overstayed in Greece just because I said, God, I have to do this, you know, I was dwelling and thinking, shall I now work with travelers? Shall I work with drug addiction? Shall I work with disabled? Shall I work with homeless? And I said, no, I want to work in the refugee or asylum seeker context, you know, for the rest of my days. And I think that's where my strength is, and that's, I think, what I'm good at. But other artists, you know, especially socially engaged arts practitioners, have a long way to go. And, you know, to create the art, you know, to point out the difficulties that people endure. And even if, let's say, you know, my work can change the mind of one person saying, oh, geez, is that really what is the provision, you know, then I'm happy. I'm very happy.